Hi, my name is Stephanie Howard, and today we're going to be talking about privilege. So privilege, by definition of Merriam-Webster, is a right or immunity granted as a particular benefit, advantage, or favor, such as a right or immunity attached specifically to a position or an office. So it's like a parking space that's reserved for someone because they're higher than some of their coworkers. So like the boss, the CEO, people like that. But today we see these words white, male, female, and black associated with privilege. Instead of being occupational, it's based on their gender, sex, or their ethnicity. So white privilege is privilege for people who are white/Caucasian. We see it mostly in rich white families. We see it in men and women who are white, and people in power, like the politicians, the president, and CEOs are mostly white. But we've only had one black president, and that's kind of white privilege because, black people were not necessarily registered to vote. They weren't allowed to run for office, stuff like that. So we've always been held to a higher standard than black people because we have oppressed people of color. So Tolerance.org has these perks of white privilege and advance of white privileges and the world view of white privilege. And the perks and advantages are related to skin privilege. So this person says, when I cut my finger and go to school or office's first aid kit, the flesh-colored Band-Aid generally matches my skin tone. When I stay in a hotel, the complimentary shampoo generally works with the texture of my hair. So my hair is straight and I can easily run my fingers through it. A black person doesn't necessarily have that texture hair. We see black people with afros. You can't necessarily run your fingers through it. And we see black people with dreadlocks, braids, all different types of hairstyles, just like we do. But the texture of their hair is more rough, it's more oily. So not all shampoos are going to work for them. And the reason why is this bullet point right here. When I buy hair care products in a grocery store, the shampoos and conditioners are in the aisle and section labeled hair care and not in a separate section for ethnic products. When we think of shampoo and conditioner, we think we're washing our hair and we're making our hair soft, but because of the different textures in white people's hair and people of color's hair, there's separate formulas and separate chemicals that are needed in those shampoos to be able to clean our hair properly and make it to where it needs to be. But the bad thing about this is shampoo is shampoo and conditioner is conditioner, so why do we have separate sections for hair care and ethnic products? When I run to the store to buy pantyhose at the last minute, the nude color is tan and it usually appears nude on a white person's legs. So if I go to the store and I buy pantyhose, I will generally find it in the color of my skin. But a black person who needs to run in at the last minute and buy pantyhose has to search for the right color for them. I can purchase travel size bottles of my hair care products at most grocery or drug stores. So little bottles of shampoo and conditioner we can almost always find. But the ethnic products that are sold in separate sections, you're most likely not going to find in those tiny travel size bottles. Now the advantages of white skin privilege, it says, my skin color does not work against me in terms of how people perceive my financial responsibility, my style of dress, my public speaking skills, or my job performance. So a white person, you have that job, you dress that way, no one's going to think anything. But if you see a black person or some other person of color dressing a certain way in a certain job, you're going to wonder why they dress like that, how'd they get that job, what are their qualifications, and why do they talk a certain way. Everybody talks differently. Everybody dresses differently. And everybody performs their job whether or not it's good or it's bad. They're doing their job. They dress that way because it's comfortable or they have to. And they speak that way because that's where they grew up. Everybody speaks differently depending on where they grew up. People do not assume that I got where I am professionally because of my race or because of affirmative action programs. So affirmative action programs is pretty much, you cannot discriminate based on race or sex or stuff like that. So a black person gets a job, their race will come into question. You only got it because you're black. You only got it because blah, 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 blah. To where a white person won't necessarily get told that. So, store security personnel or law enforcement officers do not harass me, pull me over, or follow me because of my race. We see too many videos online of people recording, people of color recording, and there's officers who pulled them over for speeding, for tail lights out, headlights out, failure to use turn signals, and they have their guns pulled out on them, and that's not okay. An officer is only instructed to pull out their gun when they feel threatened. So why is it that they feel threatened when they pull over a black person, but when they pull over a white person, it's a general conversation, they tell you what you did wrong, and they either ticket you or they let you off with a warning. That's not the case for black people. It's license and registration. It's a very serious thing. Most times they will not get off with a warning, but sometimes they didn't even do anything wrong. They just got caught being black in the wrong neighborhood. The person who wrote this article talked about how she was in a neighborhood that was predominantly black at the wrong time of day, and she was pulled over. This person is white. She was pulled over by 2 or 3 different squad cars because they thought she was going to buy drugs in this neighborhood. And they told her, we usually don't see white people here around this time of night. So when she explained this to her coworkers, they all expressed their concern, and they told her that she should file a report. But when she told her black coworker, she says, well, at least now you know how I feel, and just completely got her, and that's why she wrote this article. So the worldview is the way we shape the way that the world sees us. So when we are told about our national heritage or civilization, we are shown that the people of our color made it what it is. Too often we see so many white people who are praised for their works, but we don't acknowledge all of the people of color who have done so much for our history. Related, the schools that I attend or have attended use standard textbooks which widely reflect people of my color and their contributions to the world. So we see Abraham Lincoln helped with slavery, we see JFK, we see so many white people who are noted in history because of what they did, but we don't see more for black people. We know of Rosa Parks, we know of Martin Luther King, and since the movie Hidden Figures came out, we now know about the 3 women who helped with NASA in getting our men into the moon in the race to space with Russia. So we just see too many white people taking credit and being praised for history, but we don't see a lot of black people. When I look at the national currency or see photographs of monuments on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., I see people of my race widely spread and celebrated. The Lincoln Monument, on our money, they're all white people. We have Benjamin Franklin, we have Ulysses S. Grant, we have Andrew Jackson, George Washington. You don't see people of color for statues, and I honestly don't think there is one. I might have to do some more research on that, but anytime you see a statue, it's for a white person who has been praised in history, and that's them getting the recognition that they deserve. But where is Rosa Parks? Where's the Rosa Parks monument? Where is the Martin Luther King monument? You know, they have done so much for the civil rights movement. It should be praised as well. Now, moving on from white privilege, we're going to male privilege, and there's a male privilege checklist. It's an article written by Peggy McIntosh. Now, there's over 40 different things on this checklist, but I have the first 9 right here. My odds of being hired for a job as a man when competing against female applicants are probably skewed in my favor. The more prestigious the job, the larger the odds are skewed. So a man is more likely to get a job over a woman simply because he is a man, not necessarily because he is qualified. They just assume that because he's a man, he can do the job better than the woman. I can be confident that my coworkers won't think I got the job because of my sex, even though that might be true. So, you got the job, and no one's going to question you if you're a man. But if you got the job as a female, they're going to say, why is a woman working here? Why did a woman get the job? If I am never promoted, it is not because of my sex. A man is never promoted because of his sex unless he's against a female applicant. So if he's up against a man, they will look at the quality. But if a woman is up against a man, she will most likely not get the job because she is a woman. She is less qualified as a woman. But in terms of the job, she might be more qualified, and that's sexism at its finest. If I fail my job or my career, I can feel sure this won't be seen as a black mark against my entire sexist capabilities. So if a man does something wrong, it won't necessarily come back on all men. But if a female does something wrong, oh, it's okay. Women can't do this stuff. Or, women are set to lower standards than men. And it's just ridiculous. I am far less likely to face sexual harassment at work than my female coworkers are, which is completely true. Every 1 in 5 women are sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, raped in their lifetime, to where a man will be sexually harassed or assaulted 1 in 8, 1 in 10. So women are twice as likely to face harassment and assault than men are. So it's just as much as it is at work. If I do the same task as a woman, and if the measurement is at all subjective, chances are people will think I did a better job. So if a man and a woman do the same job, odds are that man is going to be praised a little bit more for the same amount of work. If I'm a teen or adult, and if I can stay out of prison, my odds of being raped are so low as to be negligible. Women were taught as to be sex objects, and that's why we are ogled at, we are catcalled, and stuff like that. A man will almost never be raped compared to a woman. If a man could pick to rape a man or rape a woman, he will most likely rape the woman. But it just honestly all depends on where you're at and the preference of the rapist, honestly. It sucks that there are rapists out there, but men do get raped, and that needs to be acknowledged. I am not taught to fear walking alone after dark in average public spaces. A man can walk down the street and not have to fear anything, but if a woman walks down the street, she's pretends she's on the phone, she has her keys in her hand, she's looking all around, she's more aware of her surroundings, because we've always been taught that we should walk in groups because men prey on women. If I choose not to have children, my masculinity will not be called into question, because women are said to be childbearing mothers. They have to be there for the children. The man has to go and work. So if a man doesn't want children, that's fine. Go do your job, do your life. If a woman doesn't want children, she's wasting her life away. She's wasting precious life that can be carried inside her. She's just losing her eggs for no reason. And, a woman is just judged harshly for all of the things that a man doesn't want to do if she doesn't want to do it too. It's all types of ridiculousness. But in contrary to male privilege, there is female privilege, according to a blogger called Thanatos. He runs an anti-feminist blog with other people. He is a men's rights activist, and what he does is he's talking about things. Now, this list is so long. It's about 98 checklists long, but he talks about different things and says women don't have to register for the draft is one of the things. But men made that so. We don't have to register for the draft because men said so. Men have to pay for dates. Men started calling it being a gentleman. That's why when we try to pay for dates, it's completely ridiculed. Men can't hit women, but women can hit men. This is completely false. If a woman hits a man, she should most definitely be held to the same extent. But men taught boys not to hit women, and if one hits you, you're not supposed to hit them back. So right there, women are put to a low standard because of male strength. So my question is, are we privileged or are we delicate by default? Because men seem to make all of these rules for us, but we can't make them for ourselves. Now, Alex Yard tries to explain misogyny from the Good Men Project, and he's criticized by people who tell him he doesn't know the half of it. He says, a man explaining the role misogyny plays is the equivalent of white liberals who try to instruct black folks on their oppression. He also says that social equality is the only antidote to the toxicity of the isms, like racism, sexism. And it doesn't mean that you love everybody. It states it's a state of affairs in which all people share the same status, including civil rights, free speech, property rights, and equal access rights to goods and services. I jokingly looked up black privilege, not expecting to find anything, but what I found was a definition from Urban Dictionary, and the definition reads, the ability for blacks to openly spew racist, violent hatred towards whites without social or legal repercussion. So, in short, when a white person is racist to a black person, the white person is called out for it, but when a black person is racist to a white person, they're not necessarily called out for it, which is completely untrue, because what happens is, the black person spews racist stuff to the white person because black people are usually almost always oppressed, but the white person comes back and spews stuff back to the black person. It's an ongoing thing. And black people are nearly attacked every day, sometimes just for being black. So is that really a privilege? I understand people wanting to, get back at people, but what happens is you start a fire, it just grows if you keep going. So what we need to do is we need to stop being racist, and we need to educate people more on history, and we need to denote these, decrease these stereotypes that have been programmed to our brains. That way we can create a better world. So, in short, men don't know misogyny. Men cannot tell a woman what she feels is sexist or not. And white people don't know racism, and they don't know their own privilege. But a white person cannot tell a black person what is racist and when the black person feels offended. So, what we need to do is we need to hold men and women to the same standard. We need to look more at qualifications rather than sex and gender and race. And we need to start treating people as humans again. We need to start treating people as humans instead of color and age and sex. So, anyway, thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.